And quite a number of years ago, when I was still in the process of setting up the shop, I had the Vic 9, that guy there, that is the vacuum machine that I have to rebuild. I had him over here. And I honestly don't remember exactly the layout that I had at the time, but I was down here casting by myself, and I picked up a crucible. Trying to think. It may have been before I had this one here. In fact, it must have been before I had that one. It must have been when I just had this one, because what happened was I had this full, and I mean full of bronze, and I picked it up, and the bottom of the crucible fell out. Just dropped everything that was in it straight down. Now, the problem with that is molten metal. If you've ever played with mercury, and I know we're not supposed to play with mercury anymore, but in the old days, we used to play with mercury in science class. And because it was over here, the metal bounced off the back of the bench and down the back here. Now, I have stuff stored under here. Now, I don't have much stored under here anymore. In fact, the reason this box is out on the floor and stuff is because I just got out some supplies the other day. I was checking my Vic 9 supplies, and also these are extra crucibles. So I was checking, and I am right. That big one is a 3-kilogram furnace because it says so right there. But I need to make sure that I always have the little guys too, which I do. There's one little one down there, and that's a little guy too. Yeah, and that's a 1-kilogram furnace. So, but I keep these things down under here, right over here. And at the time, I was not storing firewood over here, but I was storing a box open like this that was full of bronze, the new bronze stuff, you know, so it's that casting grain I showed you. And what happened was the molten metal came down the back here, back of the workbench, which is just a set of shelves. These are old Gorilla shelves. Now, this is a properly built building, so it has a vapor barrier between the cement and the wood in order to keep the wood from wicking moisture out of the cement. That's great, except most vapor barriers, especially the older ones, are plastic, and that's this right here. And you'll notice it's cut way back here. That's because it caught on fire. Now, when I cast, I always try and have extra buckets of water around. So my response to the wall catching on fire was I took a bucket of water and threw it against the wall. And that took care of that problem. But now I had another problem, and that was that the metal had also dripped down off of here and had landed down here where I had metal stored. Now the metal was stored in, at the time I wasn't getting my bronze from Rio, I was getting it from Indian Jewelry Supply. And so it was in a cardboard box, and the individual bags of bronze casting grain that I had bought were in plastic paper bags. So the paper bags all caught on fire, and they're under the workbench. So I have a fire extinguisher, always do, and I used it. And it could put the fire out, but there was so much residual heat that it would reignite. Now, I'm wearing a leather welding jacket and a leather welding coat and a face mask and a respirator. It had snowed, and what I did was I picked up the flaming box and I ran out the front door with it and threw it out to the snow. And opened up all the doors and windows because this place was, you could hardly see across the room for the smoke. And then I cleaned up the mess and left the stuff out in the snow and got a new crucible out of here and put it in the furnace and reheated the metal and finished the casting session. And then I swore that I would never do that again, and that I was going to completely reorganize the studio before I ever cast again, and I did. So now, if you look at this area here, I have to make sure I don't trip over the wood stove, which is behind me. There we go. Now, this is freestanding. The place that is the most dangerous is actually right over here. There's 2,000 degree metal there, and there's almost 1,800 degree metal over there. Now, I can use the smaller one also for bronze if I was just doing a plain bronze casting. I do that sometimes. I'll have bronze in here, bronze in there, same exact metal, same exact temperature, and I'll just keep pouring back and forth to be able to finish the entire set of flasks. This time I did a set of 20 flasks, and I still haven't done the math to figure out how many failed. I had some weird failures, and I do think I know why. I always try and keep really good paper records so that I can look back and say, okay, this went right, this went wrong, what happened? But the big redesign was the burnout oven and the dewaxer are over here against the wall. Is it possible either of them could catch on fire? Yeah, the dewaxer's full of water, so you'd really have to make a big screw up like letting that boil dry in order to do that. Just like any other electronic piece of equipment, this could catch on fire, but it's highly unlikely. And here we have the most dangerous area, the section where we have molten metal in 2 different locations, and the metal has to be moved and poured on the Vic-9. So if anything's going to break or spill, it's going to be right here. So what this is a piece of fire-proof, or fire-resistant at least, rock board like you would use behind a stove or in a bathroom where you needed to have something that was waterproof. And the reason that's there is, and you'll notice there's nothing on the floor, and I normally sweep right before I do this, so that there's nothing on the floor at all. There's actually some stuff stored over here right now, but that's not normally there. This is clamped here, just enough to keep it vertical. It means that should there be a spill, the spill is likely to happen right here. This is not fireproof, but it's fire resistant. It has a mat on it that is at least, I don't know if it's, honestly, if it's got, it's old enough it could have asbestos in it. But some of this stuff doesn't have asbestos, but it's resistant. These are pieces of old soldering block that you would actually do soldering with a torch on. So this stuff is super resistant to flame. There is some stuff stored underneath in the form of other crucibles and stuff like that, but generally this is pretty impervious to flame. The cement can actually be scarred, and I used to be able to see, if I would have cleaned the floor completely right now, you could see there was a spot here where I had a crucible bottom come out one time in the furnace, and I grabbed the thing with welding gloves and dumped it upside down on the floor to save the furnace, and it worked. I had molten metal all over the floor, and I saved it because it was cool. Had some of the molten metal that I threw on the floor in order to save the furnace. So this is one of those brainstorming moments when you have it figured out. And of course, I've got lots of pictures of kitties and puppies and good sayings and a dragon who got wet and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, this is my wall of craziness, my inspiration. But anyway, back to the metal. I redesigned it so the chance that anything is really going to go crazy and be able to spread to some other location is small. Normally, as I say, this normally doesn't have anything here at all, and there's probably 4 or 5 feet in every direction at least where it's just plain cement floor. Nothing to catch fire, nothing. So that was one of those things. I hadn't been really happy with the layout before, and once I set the place on fire, yeah, I know you're supposed to think those things out before you set something on fire. I think it was one of those things that was nagging in the back of my head that it could happen. And once it did, yeah. So at the end of the event yesterday, one of the things I did was I dumped the metal that was in here that was still molten into here. And this now has a block of bronze in it, which may take a little effort to get out. Yeah, it's going to be a pain. Okay, it'll come out later. But that's bronze in there. And I have some over here that looks suitably scudgy. It came out of a previous casting. There we go. That's what the top of it, the bottom of it will look like, and that's what the top of it looks like. And this will get all polished up. And once it's been all polished up in this conglomeration of various polishing machines, it will come over here to dry. You'll notice this is all bright and shiny. These are the bottom buttons where the sprues go to the pieces. And this was an extra piece, just like that piece I showed you before. And it's been mostly cleaned off. And all the stuff will get you reused. When I say that you use half old metal and half new metal, well, there's the old metal. And sometimes if it's just a little too dirty, I'll polish it again before I use it. If I've decided that it's clean enough, and I look down in the, you'll see, I don't know if it showed in the video yesterday, but before I cast, I'll always open the furnace and look down inside. And what it should look like is it should look like a shimmering mirror with no marks on top. If it doesn't, I will take a pinch of Matt's casting flux, which is just borax, and throw it in there, basically. I don't even think this is mixed anything. Anyway, yeah, do not ingest contains borax. Anyway, you throw a little bit of that in there, and it works great to take out oxides and stuff. You'll see the little sizzle sort of thing happen, and then it's ready to go. And then, see, there's some more of the unused metal, and it'll look all nice and shiny when it's all cleaned up, just like that. So, what I have to do today is do an analysis to see how the casting went. And there's all the pieces I cast yesterday on that table, along with lots of tools and other junk that's piled up right now. We're going to do that assessment I was talking about of the casting session from yesterday. So let's see how it went. So I'm going to pull you in closer, or try to at least. Here, I have my phone on a cool arm, and we're going to see if we can show people what I did. So I had 20 different flasks yesterday, and they go everywhere from buttons. These are buttons. You can see that the end of each of these is a button. And I'll cut them off right about there. And there'll be a little loop under here. It could be sewn onto your clothes. And this came out really well. I have, looks like I have one failed button out of the whole batch. So, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have 20 that are good. Not bad. And I'll cut each one of those off. What else do I have? I have a very nice set of 5 pilgrim's badges from the pilgrim site of Santiago de Compostela in Spain. And these will polish up really nicely. I'll leave a little bit of dark down on the grooves, but it's a scallop shell, and that was the sign of St. James the Elder, which is Santiago de Compostela. So those came out great. And I have a batch of mounts. Now these are the kind of things that you would stick on. You can see they're a little star, and they've got a loop on each end. You'd rivet or sew those onto either clothes or belts or pouches or something like that, and they'd be a shiny little bit of metal. And technically, I don't know, the original one I have doesn't have any enamel in here, but you could put a fake stone in there or enamel or anything else you wanted to make it more colorful too. So those came out perfectly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times 3. Yeah, not bad. I also did first time I've cast sterling silver Tudor buttons, And it looks like they came out fine. So 7 tutor buttons. These will be cut off about right there, and a hole will be drilled right there. And these can be used either, they would be shiny, obviously. They could be used either as just plain silver, or you can put enamel into them and give them color to go with, so your bling would be even blingier. So, pretty cool. But those are the positive stories. Not everything was positive. The Hercules clubs came out good, but the regular Roman clubs, where did they go? I saw them a minute ago. There they are. They did not come out well. We had I think about a 50% fail on that. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 total cast. And we have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, we have 3 that are good. There was something that went wrong, and we assume it had to do with the humidity level and the fact that the flasks may actually have gotten wet because the roof in here leaks. And yeah, that can affect the quality of the casting really badly. In some cases, you're getting pinching like that. That's a chill line. That means that the metal was constricted by the plaster somehow. Something went wrong there. Now, the most stupendous one I ever had, in terms of a fail, was probably this one. It was a larger flask, so instead of being a 2.5-inch flask, it would have been a 3-inch, 3-inch flask, and completely blew apart. And you could see exactly what happened was that the plaster inside completely cracked along this line here. And it's not a flat line. It's kind of cool, though. And I kept this because it's so amazing. I had spent probably hours, literally, getting these pieces of wax perfect and making sure that they had extra little sprues on them to make the flow work perfectly and everything else. And you can see the pieces that did cast here cast beautifully, but the flask blew out. And that caused that crack that went through, and the metal just flowed into there. And of course, it captures every single one of the pieces, so that's worthless. Except it's a great art piece. You know, it looks like a temple ring is wearing a hat of some sort, or some strange, I don't know, lily pad almost. I kept it because it just reminds me of being careful. Yesterday's instance was kind of weird.